My name is Laura McGee. I'm your host this evening, and I am a divorce mediator. I am a co-parenting specialist, and I'm also a divorce coach. Our practice is located in the village of Carlsbad, California, and I work with couples and individuals throughout California. When I'm mediating, I definitely work with both of you because I would be here as a neutral, helping clients design how they want to exit and move on to the next phase of their life. Sometimes I'm working with parents that never married, so I'm only working in a parenting capacity, building that agreement. Or sometimes when I'm coaching, I'm either helping with an exit strategy or even with somebody who's self-represented. So those are the roles that I perform. I'm a non-practicing attorney. I originate from Canada, but I've been here in Carlsbad for the last 15 years and it's lead strong divorces. So that's the Lauren again. Let me introduce you to the rest of the team. All right, we have therapists with us tonight. New member of our team. Very excited to have you, Sarah. You want to introduce yourself and tell them a little bit?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here and to be of support. My name is Sarah Imparato, and I'm a licensed marriage family therapist. And actually, I went into grad school thinking I would work with children and quickly found a sweet spot for relationships. So that has moved into I work with all sorts of relationship dynamics, couples as they're figuring out should we divorce or not, figuring out, okay, now this is our second marriage or we're blending families all throughout that process. I also work with individuals, right, throughout I say their cape is their sword, right, as they untangle different parts of first half of life to live a more meaningful second. And so I'm glad to be a part of this team because the divorce, the details of it, as the housing, the pets, finances play a role, especially seeing it from the therapy lens. And I'm licensed in a handful of states, including California, where I reside, but residing in Texas. So I'm excited to be back in my home state here and being part of the team.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sarah. All right. And Emily is pulling up for the whole real estate team tonight. Do I introduce yourself and maybe you can say few words about how you and Jennifer both worked?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Laura. And welcome, everyone. We're so glad you're here. So, I'm the mortgage broker of the Hub. I'm certified in divorce. I own my mortgage company in Encinitas, California for over 20 years now. So, I have seen hundreds of divorces and I've helped navigate finances throughout the years, some perfectly amicable, some the furthest from. It is part of my path with my career, and I really do enjoy educating people and empowering them to make the best financial decision that they can. The family home is often the largest asset and the most emotional at the same time. So it carries all the memories and the stability that we have, and deciding what to do with that asset can be a little difficult and stressful for people. So my goal is to just really sit down and have a full discovery period, decide, does it make sense to hold on to the home, basically retain the home, sell the home, or defer the sale. And if it is the party that is taking over the home, is it affordable, and looking at long-term finances. So I love what I do. I love helping people and I love getting them through this tough time. So I look forward to talking to all of you.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yes. And Lori is a newer member of our team as well, but Lori and I have worked together for probably the past 10 or more years. Lori, tell us a little bit about what you do and how you fit into the whole divorce world.
Thanks, Laura. I'm a CDFA, which stands for Certified Divorce Financial Analyst, and there's two functions. The first is acting as a forensic accountant, doing separate property tracing, and the second is as a financial planner. So, for instance, divorce in California is legal and financial, and a lot of people may say, hey, I think I'd like to see us dividing our assets and debts fairly. Some may think that means dividing community property 50-50. I'm the person who helps you understand what is community property in this marriage to be divided and what is separate property that stays with either spouse. That can be an important issue. In litigated cases, it comes up a lot, and sometimes in mediated cases as well. The second role is being that divorce financial planner. So once you know what is the half of community property, once you know what child and spousal support might look like, how do you make smart decisions in the divorce process? Not all assets are the same. They may have financial values, but you could choose one settlement scenario and run out of money by the time you're 55, or choose another scenario and never run out of money. Those are extreme examples, but every decision you make in divorce is going to have a short-term impact and a long-term impact on your financial future. So that's what a CDFA does. Happy to be here.
Yeah, including the pets. Well, we're talking about those. Absolutely. Usually we also have an attorney with us. Kenneth Lee is an amazing attorney. His whole practice is family law. He's here in Carlsbad, California. He doesn't practice outside of San Diego County, because you'll find that when county to county, regardless of whether you're in California or certainly out of state, although he's licensed to practice throughout California, every county has its own little quirks, rules, traditions. You have to know who the judges are and what you're working with if you're in the litigated world. So Ken does a couple roles. He, of course, is the litigator, meaning he can run cases that are going to go mostly through the courts. They can take your case to trial if necessary. Still very unusual. But also sometimes she's a consulting attorney. So if you're mediating, you really don't have to go anymore. Don't think that if you're mediating, we're isolating yourself. And it's part of Vesta's mission to help you understand that building a team is part of divorcing without regret. So maybe you want a consulting attorney, help you behind the scenes, almost like a coach, where they don't come onto the playing field, but they help call the play and give you some feedback. Is this a good deal? Because the mediator's role is to be neutral. So to get a lot of information, ideally, it's my style to say, I can give you a lot of information, but I can't say, oh, this is a good deal. Instead, I have to say, I think you should speak with your attorney, get some advice. So he plays that role. And sometimes attorney to attorney negotiations are needed, and it's still more efficient than going to trial. Ken definitely has a very practical, family-focused approach. So join us here other times, because you'll get to hear from Ken directly, but I could definitely vouch for him, because again, we joined Vesta in 2019 together. So we've been working together for quite a while, along with this whole team. For those of you that are new to Vesta, I just want to explain that Vesta as an organization started on the East Coast. Gosh, I think 14 years ago now, and they came to California in 2019. We were their first team. And what Vesta does is they go out and find professionals, they vet us, and then they put us into geographically organized hubs, because their vision is to help to educate and inform, to help you build a team, and to help you come through this divorce process without kind of basically the carnage that can happen in the litigated model. Some cases, litigation is the way you have to go, but consider that to be a last resort. I like to think of it like with triage. You have a headache, don't go straight to the brain surgeon. Start with an aspirin, maybe a little physio, figure out where you need to go before you start going all the way with the litigated model. So tonight we are going to be talking more about custody, visitation plans, and also the pets and how it might integrate with the children, or maybe you only have pets. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what the mediated model would look like, and then I'll speak on behalf of Ken a little bit to talk what that might look like. And then we're going to engage with the whole team and talk not only about stories, personal stories and litigated or compromise stories, about options for you, so you can think about this more holistically, because pets and children are financial. There's lots of money involved in raising children and raising pets. But also there's a lot of emotional decisions involved in both things you can get. So I think maybe we'll just start with a little bit about what a mediating environment might look like, both from a parenting perspective and then how pets can morph into that, or if you only have pets. So to mediate, it does take two people that both agree that you want to mediate. And the best advice I'd say is to seek out mediators together. My personal style is I always want to meet with both people together at the same time, so that they don't already think I'm working for the other person. And even though I know I'm neutral, if the other person doesn't believe I'm neutral, I've already lost my value to some extent. Because here I am trying to convince the other person, feeling I'm neutral. I'm neutral. It's like you're trying to convince somebody of a negative. Yeah. That's just interview, probably 2 or 3, because somebody's going to work for the two of you and somebody's not. It's a bit of chemistry. The mediator's not a judge. They don't replace the judge. They facilitate. So they're going to pull you in, help you build a team. Maybe you need financial assistance. Maybe you need to talk to our Jennifer Cheney or someone like her, a realtor, to help you determine what's the value of the home, because that's going to be a big discussion. Maybe you need to go speak with someone like Emma Palmer to talk about, can I afford to buy the home before I'm negotiating for something that is unaffordable? maybe we need to be talking with therapists about the family structure and what's going to be best for your children and maybe the best for you as well. So there's building reason we work in teams here at Vesta as we know it takes a team to get through this process. If you select a mediator, the mediator will literally file your legal proceedings for you. You don't have to do any of that. They will identify the issues with you and establish, do any referrals need to be made? Because usually when I send somebody out that come to me to mediate, I don't want them to hire two experts and start the battle. I want them to go to someone like Lori together and figure out what questions are, I like to say, beyond my pay grade. But you need an expert, like one of the people here, to help you decipher, is Lori made a comment, is this community property or separate property? And this can even happen with pets. Because in California, if you have a premarital asset, and pets are assets, and guess, because you can buy and sell them, but we also have pet custody. So maybe you already had a pet when you came into the marriage, or maybe you were gifted with a pet. Happy birthday, here's your cat or dog. And gifts are also exceptions. However, how's the community been paying for your pet? We have what's called a right of reimbursement. If it's your pet and you believe it's your gift or your premarital asset, but the community has been investing in grooming, in pet care, in veterinary, like thousands of dollars. Is there a right of reimbursement? What do you think, Lori? Could that pop up?
Such issue spotting you're doing.
Yeah. And tell us about rights of reimbursement.
It's just pets. One of the things that I've noticed in my work is that people just tend to underestimate the expense of a pet. When you get divorced in California, you have to do, we call them the PDODs. They're basically your initial disclosures, preliminary financial disclosures. And there's a form FO-150 where you're supposed to put together a budget. And often people who are pet owners will say, hey, I have grooming for my pet or dog walking. Many other times people don't even have a category. And I say, where's the pet expense? They say, oh, it's in the groceries because I get the pet food. And just think, when you have a pet, it's very likely that you're going to have some unfortunate catastrophic thing happen, a $5,000 or $10,000 emergency bill or procedure. And you haven't budgeted for it. So that's stressful enough when you are together with your partner. What happens if you're sharing custody of the pet?
And so some of the arrangements sometimes, so say, let's start with a scenario that you have children and you have just one dog. Let's just keep it simple for a minute. Sometimes what parents decide is the pet will move with the child. So what could be an advantage of a pet moving with the child? First of all, it could be a really nice companion, security blanket for the transition the child's going through. It also means that when you don't have the children, you don't have to walk the dog. You can take a weekend off and you have a true weekend off. Because one of the things that people come to appreciate about a co-parenting plan is quite often they have at least every second weekend off. Whether that means they work more every second weekend so they can make enough money for their new lifestyle, or they just have some free time. Maybe they don't want to have a pet. So sometimes that's a scenario that's discussed. Typically, if you have a cat, we don't see cats moving because they don't move. Well, we always want the cat around. What's the cat? Simple. Just empty the box. I have a cat at home and he has an automatic feeder if I'm out of town for 3 days. So he's okay. But you can't leave a dog home for 3 days with an automatic feeder and hope he doesn't basically ravage your home. But also, I've dealt in cases where people had parrots, whole different challenge there. Multiple animals, no children, and they don't know whether they want to separate the animals because the animals are bonded. So now we're talking about the animals. And then we have an additional financial concern because if you're living in a single family home, you probably own the home. You probably wouldn't have bought a pet, but not necessarily. But more often than not, you have a single family home with homeowners, and now you want someone to move out. And what are they going to face? Pet rent. And already, if you live in San Diego County in particular, or many of the counties in California, you might have a low interest mortgage. Emily's going to talk a bit about that. So maybe the cost of living in those 3-bedroom home is $3,000 a month because you have a great mortgage. And you're going to move out and you need a 3-bedroom rental. with pet rent. And now it's $4,500. And that's within the same neighborhoods when you're close enough to co-parent. And I call it the golden triangle we look for. No more than about 15 minutes away from school on each parent. So if we twist the triangle each way, no children are strapped in a car seat or in a car for more than 15 to 20 minutes trying to get to school or the other parent. Because let's face it, oh, my soccer shoes are at dad's house. Oh, my homework's at mom's house. Oh, the dog didn't get in the car. It ran out the door. And so all of these things, there's so many considerations when we build a parenting plan. But I want to bring a few of us in because we will talk about a lot of stuff tonight. Sarah, tell us a little bit. I'm sure you come up against this when people are trying to think about even needing a marriage. How often does this one pet like, oh my God, but I've got the dog? And tell us a bit about some of the matters that you end up diving into.
Yeah, the pet definitely plays a role, and sometimes it can surprise one of, oh, I didn't think it would impact me this much, right? And even working with it individually, because we can get very attached, right? And it's sometimes even seeing the children get attached to, or that's the emotional support. If you think about it, even in court, sometimes they have the pet there with them. So I think it's looking at it from, there's a couple different layers from our seat. Definitely processing the emotions, also noting the difference between what is the emotion behind it aside from the practical decision, right? And learning how to do that collaboratively as well. So it certainly comes up in vetting the context, right? But when you were talking about, okay, it's divorce with children, sometimes my mind goes to, okay, was it one child and that's their sibling, right? And can they be collaborative with that? Is there this power and control? And if there is the dog going back and forth, is that going to add another layer of communication, a way to manipulate, right? So always looking at the context of the scenario and vetting it from all the different angles and working with the team on that.
You made such a great point there because it's challenging for some people to move the children back and forth. A lot of times they prefer transitions to not new person. So we're going to drop the child off at school. Where's the dog going to go? Exactly. Here. Or are you actually going to the other parent's house? So usually, quite often, depends on the context of the couple, trying to minimize interactions. If the pet's the blankie for the child, you want the blankie to move between houses. So these have their own context. There's no one size fits all. I will say this, most times, pets that don't live as long as children. So that's the good news for the child. It's tough news for the pet owners because now we're going to have to also negotiate against your agreement who has the final right to decide if this pet should undergo, they got hit by a car, should they have their hip replaced, or they have cancer, should we give them chemo? Because they're doing this. And many couples, very few couples I've seen have pet insurance. And so in the negotiation is not only are we going to share the pet, are we willing to share the expenses? Who gets to make end-of-life decisions? Are you going to have a veto power that if you disagree, but you want to pay? For example, a couple right now where if I decide I want to override and I want the pet to have the treatment, I'd be willing to then take on all future treatment, and I'm the sole person to make the end-of-life decision at that point. I've crafted a lot of these agreements, and they're very specific to each couple. But for sure, I'm always asking, okay, what's your end-of-life plan? And I've had couples where they've agreed one person's going to keep the pet, the other person's going to give them a lump sum and say, okay, whatever you do, here's my contribution. Pet lives for 1 year or 15 years. And do this. Usually that's been when there's no children, because the other thing that sometimes happens when there's no children, the pet is this thread that's folded together. And what a couple where they had a pool, and pet father, because he didn't have any children, took it to a different room. And that mother was like, oh my God, this is about haircut. And like basically, if they took their child to the barber and cut their hair off, I went, oh my God, sure, a beautiful pool. Having to share this control is also sharing control of each other.
Was it converse? Interestingly, I've had the converse where just last month, I had a client. I was an advocate to her. I was not a neutral in this situation. And no kids. The two of them didn't have any minor children. And she was being left with 3 dogs. He wanted nothing to do with the dogs, nor the expense of the dogs. And as you talked about, Laura, with the pet rent, She's trying to figure out where are they going to go because they have to sell their house because of their cash needs. And now she has 3 dogs. Where's she gonna go pay where he can just be a little bachelor, no pet children, and she's gonna have a lifelong 3 dogs. How long are they gonna live? What's the cost of that? And I don't know that he had any obligation to pay anything.
That's an interesting question because I would take the perspective, again, not being a judge, but I would take the perspective in California, our law says you can buy and sell pets. They're like lots. The minute you buy them, they start costing more and they depreciate in value. So put them in the same category as a yacht or an expensive car you drive it off the lot, it's worth less. But they also have pet custody. We have both of them. So if the community purchased 3 pets, they purchase an obligation. And so to say your problem, I want to know the dynamics. Was mom saying, I have to have 3 dogs? Was that her saying, I need these dogs? Or was he, so what's going to be the conversation around that? Did he acquiesce? Did they go pick them out together? Did they buy them from a breeder? Did they pay out tons of money? Did they just get them from the pound? Did they inherit them? I think you've got to start, Emily, tell what happened in your situation. Because this will happen too.
Yeah. Yeah. I had 2 dogs. I have 2 dogs already. And then when my mom passed, I inherited her dog. So now I have 3. And a part of her trust was she did a certain amount of money for whoever would be the caretaker of Buster. But he was already a senior when I got him. So I figured, oh, maybe I have a year, maybe 2. And now we're going on 3, almost 4. And he's a great dog, but he's definitely older. He's incredibly attached to me. So he sleeps with me. He's two steps behind me everywhere I go throughout the day. He's a complete sweetheart. And luckily I'm a huge animal lover. So he is in a good space and I will take care of him to the best that I can and that mom would want. But we travel a lot. So, when I do have to find a place for him, it's several $1,000s every time for my two dogs. I take my little one with me. And then just all his caretaking. He needs his teeth cleaned. He needs his well checks. He needs all the things that dogs need. And I love what you said, Laura, earlier when we were talking that, you want to make the best decision for the pet. And I have seen so many different circumstances. I even had another divorce situation where she stayed in the home, but in order for her to afford her home in Encinitas, she had to rent out a few bedrooms, and they had a little dog, and he liked to bark, and he didn't like visitors, and so all of a sudden, this loving animal that she wanted to keep for the 3 daughters became a complete nuisance because it was preventing her from making income to allow her to afford a home, the family home. So I'm sure Laura and I and all of us could probably share so many stories, but we do love these animals and they are a part of our family. So it is really looking not only at the here and now, but what the future holds for how when your lifestyle might change and say you are traveling more or there's health issues with that animal or there's just so many things that can happen, especially if you have to move away from the family home. Being a property owner myself, you don't really want 3 big dogs in a rental. You don't really want maybe even 2. It can be very wearing on the property, especially if there's not the appropriate outdoor facilities for the dog. And is it fair for that animal that maybe enjoyed this beautiful space and all of a sudden he's locked in an apartment while you work for 8 hours a day? So it is something to really consider and to have someone like Laura negotiate when you're going through mediation to figure out the best space for that animal because it can be a difficult decision.
Let's talk about practical tips for folks going through divorce that are mediating with Laura or somebody else. 2 important tips. Number 1, you don't want to think of the pets as an afterthought. This is a primary issue, no different than if you had kids and you wanted to be talking about child support and child custody right off the bat. So do not leave pets till the end. And number 2, you've got to have financial written agreements. And these are very different agreements because these agreements have to have conditional logic. If, as Emily says, oh no, I now can't find an apartment, or no, I can't rent this out, or whatever, what we need to think about, if plan A doesn't work, what is the financial agreement between the two parties for plan B and for plan C?
Absolutely.
And you've got to have a good mediator to say, okay, that's the ideal situation, folks. Now, what happens if 12 months from now, here's the problem? The dog is a nuisance. What are we going to do here? Or all of a sudden, taking the dog back and forth between two homes isn't working, or one party can't afford it. This is really, it's not rocket science, but it is so many scenarios, permutations that have to be thought through.
It's interesting from a therapist lens, we have two thinking patterns of one is like the rules and the rules are always up for negotiation, right? So as a family unit, it's like, oh, who divides this? Who does that? And Laura, you and I have talked a little bit about of how we can collaborate with the mediator in processing those different scenarios and the kind of, we say, cover your ass dynamic of it, right? And then also seeing everything from, as a therapist, like what is the system? And as the system changes, right? As Emily said, and now I inherited a dog, right? And then, oh, what if I travel? What if I remarry and they have a pet, right? And you can't control predicting every scenario, but trying to process so you make those kind of clear decision at that time. I've heard from so many individuals at that time, it was too emotional, right? But now looking back, so using this team to look at it from all the different lenses that are in the best interest to make the decision at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just so important because basically we're all saying is the time you're thinking about the children, that's top of mind. You're thinking about, oh, if somebody says 223, you're starting to get math in 50-50, all this stuff. And we're going to talk about this next. But the pet's not often part of that discussion right away. And I've had it several times where people who are keeping the cat, they're willing to negotiate that as part of their support. Just finished a war recently where there was no spousal support. However, as legally that for the next 3 years minimum, they do have an elderly pet. Because I'm not signing on forever, but for the next 3 years, I'll split the vet bills 50-50. Anything over $500, I have to agree. And if I don't agree, we pay. So that was their particular agreement. And each of these has been nuanced, but I've found clients to negotiate. But the point is, quite often, when you fill out, there's a form FL 142, and that's a list of all your assets, all your debts. On page 3 at the bottom, it says other. So I tell people, here's what I sometimes find in other. Do you have any pets? Oh, yeah. I said, okay, we're going to put your pets in here. What do you have? Cryptocurrency, gold bars. There's all kinds of things. Burial plots, that surfboard collection, that's worth a fortune. But it's not specifically on the form. So nobody is automatically, you know how we just Q&A, right? If you're not asked, you don't answer. So basically, I'm just saying as a tip, if you have a pet, bring it up because your pets are both an asset and a liability. And you can have pet custody if it suits your service. So that's a lot about the pets because that's so huge, to be honest. I want to talk a little bit about with children. And we did mean to put them second because they actually are always first. But I also don't want the pets to be so far down at the bottom that we're like, oh, and by the way, they have a pet, you should throw them in there. Because when we think about the children, that's automatic. And one of the things I want to talk about is if you want to be in a mediated environment, make sure you're interviewing for somebody who really enjoys working with parenting funds. I belong to a group of mediators, and we meet monthly for just Zoom meetings and then every quarter. And it's so funny. They're like, oh, I just do parenting now. I'm like, and people say that. And I'm like, what? I'm like, I don't think you want to be a divorce mediator and not want to do parenting. I know you're not all parents of young children, but in California, the courts lose jurisdiction over your children when they graduate high school or turn 19, whichever's first, so usually 18. But you don't lose the obligation to be a parent. They're going to college. So when I'm mediating, I'm like, okay, what's your college plan? We'll have college savings. Are they going to live at home and go to the local community college and live with a parent? Because California says that when a child emancipates, if there was a potential to renegotiate spousal support, but they continue the fact support it, which usually means they're staying at home with mom and going to community college, and she's supporting a child that is with no support. So also in a mediating environment, it would go beyond the jurisdiction of, you can talk about children with special needs, and maybe they can't, when they need the house, maybe the home has already been outfitted for them. Maybe the home becomes more important to a special needs child. I was working with a family where their son's autistic, and for him, a house switch is really not, it was just not. So the parenting in the primary home, and they're maintaining the primary home as a nest while nesting arrangement. It will be sold at some point, but they build on the plan around the special needs of their son, and they're working with them through various services. They do anticipate that he will be able to emancipate, but probably to a special needs long-term children, not. He's not going to become independent. What are the needs of your children? What are your abilities? Because we want to talk generally about this so often, and I hear this more often from the women who are us, is, oh, I'll just take over their mortgage, right? They get to choose. And so buying out a home is a big complex battle. And Emily, maybe you can walk us through a little bit, like even if it's best interests of the children, stay in the family home now with great stability, what do they have to be able to do to be able to do?
Yeah, that's probably part of one of the main parts of our discovery phase. It's really summarizing the different income streams and what we can rely on consistently. We will use spousal and child support if it is a situation where she or he decide to take over the family home. But it's also a lot of just looking at what their expenses are, not just on a rolling debt schedule, what their credit looks like and their credit cards, but also what does it take to maintain that home? I've had several instances where, one of the spouses really wants the family home. And then once the other spouse has left, they realize, oh my gosh, just the fees for water and the gardener or the pool guy or whatever the normal maintenance of that house can be really overwhelming. And then they sometimes forget, oh, maybe one of the spouse fixed everything around the house. So he was the one that kind of maintained all the appliances and or whatever the exterior, the just fixing like sprinklers and things like that. And all of a sudden they have these monthly debts that were just so unexpected. So it can be overwhelming. So it's really, and I think a lot of what I hear, and I'm sure everyone probably hears this, in the beginning stages of divorce, it's like a numbing stage for some people. They're just so in it that they're not really seeing like the big periphery of everything. And I think that's where all of us come in as a team to really distill it down to, okay, we know you have this emotional tie to the home, but does this really make sense on a long-term effect on the grand scale of things? And the emotions that are tied to a home, sometimes it's better to make a clean break because that home can just hold so many memories and things that you realize 6 months from now that, oh gosh, not only is it overwhelming financially, but just emotionally, I can't be here anymore. It reminds me too much of him, her, or whatever. So yeah, there's just a lot that goes into it aside from just the discovery phase of looking at, okay, what is our support issue? Or what are support on a monthly basis? What are our expenses? What is the income that I can plan on? What if that support might change in 6 months to a year or further down? Because that's normally a 30-year mortgage. It's a very long time and a lot that can happen within that time. And also, if you are buying that spouse out, today's market is a heck of a lot different than it was a few years ago. So rates are inflated. What does that affordability level look like? I always say once you're taking over that debt, make sure you can live your same lifestyle before you had that. Because the worst thing is to be so strapped to a home that you can't maintain if you like to go out with your friends or travel or your kids play all these sports. And all of a sudden you're just really pulling back the reins on things that brought you so much joy. So it's really looking at things that maybe you're not thinking about at that time. And that's my job, my position, just to make sure that we are checking those boxes emotionally and financially to make sure that you're making a good decision, not just now or a year from now, but potentially 20 years from now.
We talked about the team. So you're going to be helping people figure out, can I afford this house now? Can I qualify for the house now? And I have to remind a lot of my clients, they may have 3 kids today, and in 4 years, they've all aged out of child support and there's no child support. And then at the same time, they've been given what's called a GAV run warning to start becoming financially self-sufficient, build a career, and all of a sudden spousal support has been reduced or eliminated. And now I pay the same expenses of this home. And then the double whammy is that then they find they have no choice and they're put in a corner to sell the home later. And they have to eat all the repairs to get it ready for sale, all the commissions to our fine agents and brokers, and all the capital gains tax that they could have split with their spouse. So the team approach is great because we have to analyze the divorce, as Emily said, not in the today, not just in 5 years, but what decisions are you making that you may be proud of 20 years from now, or you may regret 20 years from now.
And I'm sure for you too, Sarah, when you're talking with clients, do you see what heavy attachment to the home as part of maybe even staying in the marriage too long, being that I won't have a home?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's definitely an element of what's keeping you in the home, and that even can be their own story. I grew up in a home, like not being in a consistent home, therefore I want this. So again, using that team approach of okay, how are we looking at it from financially? How are we looking about this, protecting yourself in the present and then the future, and then processing the emotions around it and the decision making. And then you can also include ceremonies. That's a big part of it. Is there are emotions involved, but how can you make it ceremonial? So it makes the untangling process a little bit more smooth and a little bit more clunky.
What would that look like?
There's so many different ceremonies. There's one example with the pets, right? And it's you can a way of writing a letter to the pet, having this goodbye ceremony if it is going to one individual home. Same with the house, is maybe having this last dinner experience, right? And then creating maybe these anchors in your new home. What are the things that you're reframing it? What are the exciting components that you want to put into the new home? What did you not have at that last home that you want to curate there, right? So you can look at it from the children, from the pets, from all different lenses and different ways to do ceremonies. And it's really fun to have how creative clients get with it. And then also a sense of belonging, others, like-mindedness in the experience, right? That's why that sense of belonging and someone in a shared experience. If I've been through that before, this is how I handled that, and it may give a different perspective with it as well.
There's so many, it's so interesting perspectives because obviously we have clients that frame it as I'm losing my home. I've lost my spouse. I'm losing my home. Where other clients I have are thrilled to get rid of the home. I want to go. I don't want to go cut anything in my garden again. I want to be in a condo and I want to go out every night. So it's really interesting what you're saying, Sarah, about how you can process these feelings.
And you can reframe it, right? If it's, oh, I'm stuck in the grief of it, but what are you gaining from the new space, right? And if it's sometimes, for me, that's looking at it from all the lenses of that individual, right? It's also if they're like, oh, I'm so excited about this new experience, but are they trying to bypass the sadness of it, right? And how they can be intentional and respectful and mindful for the experience for the others involved, and that there might be a mismatch in the attachment or in the emotions around it. Right. That might be part of why they are in the divorce process is, oh, I'm now value this versus that you value that. And this is why I'm making this decision.
And it's interesting you said ceremonies. I'm looking with a couple this week, and on Friday, they're going to the airport, 2 separate flights with their 8-year-old son, and they're both moving to Florida. And so the home for the last 3 days is going to be empty of furnishings. I said, okay, go over to IKEA and get one of those little IKEA tents and get some takeout pizza. And because they haven't told their son yet that they were divorcing. They just told them that we're moving. And I said, and then we scripted how to share with their son that when he leaves this home, he's lucky him, he's going to have 2 homes. And he's going to have a mommy home and a daddy home. And
That's
so
great.
he had to leave this home. But guess what? You're going to have 2 homes. I don't have 2 homes, but you're going to have 2 homes. And you're going to spend some time with mommy at her home, some time with daddy at his home. And we're going to figure out what all that's going to look like. And they're like, oh, I like the idea of the little IKEA tent. I said, because you could just be all in there. I said, he'll probably remember this forever. Little 8-year-old, like, oh, we had all this little, Sarah, I hadn't even thought of calling it a secret. So thanks for giving me the language.
Yeah.
But I said, why don't you just make it really like fun for him and say, okay. And I gave them a couple of books to the Dinosaurs Divorce, and they were beautiful string books. So I said, here's some books you can read with him as he camps out in his home, and get yourself ready for the next part of his journey.
Like that. That's so creative. That's so neat.
qualities. But sometimes it's hard when you're inside those emotions to do what your children need. And when I'm working with my clients, here's something I'll tell everybody now, because you can do it yourself if you have children. I ask them to go away and write the story that they hope their children will one day tell about orders. And I said, don't imagine you get to totally control that story. You're actors in that story, and just by two people to go to the same movie and come away with a different experience. So don't think you're in charge of the story, but think that you're a lead actor. And every time that's your North Star, and every time you find yourself drifting, go back and read the story. You hope the child will one day tell about the divorce, and ask yourself, what could I do to resentments? And something you might even want to share that with your child. You say, I knew this was a tough time. It certainly was a tough time for me, and I probably didn't do everything perfectly. But this was my greatest hope for us. This would be what we gave you, the gift of a peaceful divorce that you learned in the middle, feeling the center versus the middle, I call it. Can you build a moat around your child, a protective moat, so they are the center of your focus, meaning you're not in charge of everything, but the center of ensuring that you've protected them as a parent would like to do. They don't need to know about the divorce. The children, they need to, the child, protect them from too much information. I've occasionally probably heard this, Sarah. Like parents say, they need to know the truth. I'm like, did you tell them there's no sense? Like, I guess you've been lying to them all this time. Your child does not need to know why you're getting a divorce because you don't know why you're getting a divorce. Unless you spend a lot of time working with their own therapist and are willing to fess up to how it happened. Because if it's probably like watching hair grow, you don't really know, and that's going to take some exploration on your own part. Couples have said he or she had an affair. I'm like, do you think that's when it started? I don't mean to be mean, but I'm like, to try and cast one thing that happened as this is why we're getting on divorce. It's complex. And so not involving the children, because the couple, dad said to me, our son wants to know why. So the why is because sometimes when parents choose love, it doesn't work. But don't worry, you chose us. And we're always going to love them. So helping them, like children ask tough questions because they're curious, they're smart, and also the world's black and white and your world's gray. You're going to teach them a little bit about growing up. No matter.
I still think it's black and white.
People don't grow up. It's okay.
The numbers are, right? And so that's why it's having that team approach. Yeah. From our lens as a relational counselor, it's always looking at the dynamic. And so you have to really know your part in that dynamic. Okay, how did I participate into this? What was my contribution, right? And for a child to wrap their head around that, but to see, oh, how does the relationship continue? Because sometimes it is some of the same things still exist as you're dividing assets, as you're co-parenting, right? So can you clean up the skill set and show them how to be relational, right? Which is a very foreign concept, I think, for many, right? To learn that concept of interconnected. And so not explaining they did this in the blame game, but this is have your statement, right? Your elevator pitch of really being honest, more clear about it's about the relationship, and relationships change.
And helping the children understand that relationships change, and also age-appropriate discussions. 8-year-old, he wants to know who's in time out. His world's simple. Somebody did something wrong, because otherwise he was. And so if you respond to his version of the world, you're basically enforcing, as opposed to saying, which complicated, and sometimes when adults make choices, they can't win. They have to explain everyone. You probably don't know why the stars don't fall. And he might ask you, and your answer is the same. I don't know. We should figure that out. We don't have to know everything, just the gym. And about why your relationship.
So did we get any questions submitted on our topic today?
And I think some of the other things I just wanted to point out before we jump on the questions is even just a lot of times you're changing not just whether you're going to be a two-home family, but there's more options that you may be in. I've crafted many nesting agreements where the children stay in the home and the parents take turns leaving and call it nest. The children stay. And that can work for a while. Most people last maybe 12 to 18 months. One couple last 6 years. They broke all the records. But I think they were roommate-style partners anyway. They'd known each other since high school, and they just outgrew their relationship. So they didn't have conflict. They just didn't want to be married anymore. For most people, that's quite challenging, but they might do it until little ones out of preschool and going to school, and those after-school pairs is a budget. Or the eldest one's about to graduate high school and we don't want a child out of the home during the senior year, so we will nest. And the nesting requires lots of different kinds of compromises and agreements and boundaries. You don't want to come back to the nest. Often it's a week on, week off, but not always. And the dishes are on the counter and it's just a mess. So usually I'm
The dishes were on the counter while you were married. Why would they not be on the counter while you're divorced?
because now you're going to probably hire a housekeeper. And like, first thing I'm going to do so that you don't have to fight like roommates. I said, you're going to be roommates, but you're going to be roommates with a person you have a lot of triggers with. So guess what? You're not going to have two houses to rent, two rents. You're going to have something smaller. So you can afford a housekeeper. And that's going to keep a lot of conflict away. And you're going to have your Amazon and your Costco account for all the, make them make a household budget. And then if you want to take the kids to Applebee's and the other person wants to take them to the beautiful steakhouse, that's your budget. But the Cheerios and the toilet paper and everything that was supposed to be in the household for every day, you share. And so it teaches them their budget. It gets them really clear on this is what it costs to work here. And we try to minimize what it costs to create a nest in quite a few different ways. And so that's an option. Delaying a sale, nesting, sometimes just delaying a sale where one party still lives in the home. I have another case that coming in to sign tomorrow. And mom's living in the home, daughter's living in the home, 14 and 17. And she's going to continue to live there until they graduate high school. And they created this entire financial arrangement, how and when it sells, how everything's going to be paid out. And when I do that, I build in a whole bunch of stopgap measures. Like, what if she died? What if she stopped paying the mortgage? All the what ifs. So you have to go down a what if imagination and build an agreement that is beyond the divorce. Because we'll be divorced, but you're financial partners. What is that? And, but if you're doing it because it's cost effective, but on these low interest mortgages, houses in the school district, you can make this easy for your children. Again, we're writing the story, your children. We're willing to put up a little inconvenience, and you of them, the gift to them is saying, okay, we can do this for a while. The rust is when people do it, I find when they nest when the children are like 7, 8, 9, that age group, and they do it for a while, and then they become a 2-household family, we can speak to this, sir. It's like parents got divorced twice. They're like, oh, why are we changing housing? Because we like this. What's your problem? Because the parents have been dancing around the maypole for 2 or 3 years, and they didn't prepare the children for the fact that this was phase 1. And so phase 2, we will become, so I always tell them, if you're going to do this and you're going to let the children adjust, then you need to tell them, guess what? We're starting middle school next year. Who's going to be different? What do you think, Sarah?
Yeah, and I think it's to the point is, again, you might not be able to predict how it could surprise people how someone's going to respond or not. But in real time, the rule of thumb is just asking the open-ended questions, right? And then for a child, depending on the age, that's where the sand tray therapy comes in, right? Play, using that creative outlet. Yes, there's the modality of in movement, having them talk about it, but then also it's, oh, I don't know if you've the classic, what did you draw? Oh, I drew my parents living in 2 homes, and the teacher calls them in, right? So it's okay in life. It's teaching them a great skill of how to be flexible, how to adapt to change. But from my lens of, okay, what is it like when they're 40? What is the story they tell themselves? If you can catch that real time. So being mindful of, okay, let's have conversations. Let's have a professional have conversations with them and rewriting the story so it's the most authentic version of it instead of the beliefs that then can create these abandonment wounds, right? Is all of these actions are in the best interest financially, best interest of structure of the home and routine, as long as we're catching the stories and the meaning that's created.
Yeah, exactly. Really think that's was basically what we're here to talk about, China. I hope that we've given you lots of information. Is when you're building, what's next? So the children, of course, are the priority, but if you have pets, they're going to be a component of the discussion. Or maybe you only have pets, and that can be complex. Quite often when there's only pets, and somebody wants to keep an ongoing pet parenting relationship on, that it maintains its meaning from the, what's the purpose? Or we do have, because it's convenient. I had a couple that did do it because one person was a flight attendant. And they're like, oh, this is great. Every time I have a trip, you just take the dogs. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. it wasn't to maintain the relationship. It was to support the owner. The underlying question is, why do I want to share a pet with somebody I don't want to be married to? Is it for the convenience for the pet, or is it because I really don't want to not be married to this person so I can handle this relationship? Of course, you should see Sarah.
Or they both just love the pet.
Yes, but it's a tough one. When you both love the pet, here's what happens. You're blaming each other for how the pet was cared for. It got out. It had a car accident. It got sick.
That's
You know, and why didn't it happen on Rule Watch? That didn't happen. That's complicated. So I'm just saying, these are the considerations. If you're working with an experienced team, they're going to help flag the issues. We don't solve your issues. We flag the issues and ask you to ask yourself, here's the important questions. Where do they lead you? What kind of answers come up for you? What feels comfortable? Is this a fit for a family? Is this a good short-term fix? Is it a long-term fix? So Jennifer, often, who's not here tonight, often says, if someone wants to keep the home, would you want to keep this for 5 to 7 weeks? Because that might be the cycle that we would need to overcome, what Laura said, the cost of, if you had to sell it, all of those extra expenses. So Laura can help you do the math. And I had a client recently, she goes, I definitely want to assume the mortgage. It was assumable because it's only $2,800 a month. And I said, does that include homeowners insurance, property taxes, HOA? She goes, I don't know. Because she wasn't paying that much, hadn't gotten budget. So guess what? It's $4,600 per month. And we just had a special assessment because it now requires that all the balconies be inspected and all their every 10 years now, and all of these condominium complexes that haven't been inspected, choose one over me. And I'm like, okay, so now you got to be ready to pay more like $5,000 per month for additional assessments. And it just goes changeable and reality check. Because she kept saying, I can't rent anything cheaper. It's $2,700. About a lot.
Yeah. Rents are definitely elevated. So I get it. But it's just putting pencil to paper. It really is, to see what makes the most sense. And like you said, accounting for everything. There's all these little things that if you're not the main bill payer, you wouldn't know until you're really looking at it from that stance. And it can be, you can miss things easily that can be incredibly costly.
And when you're under distress, right, or you're unsure, you're frozen, however you react, right, having that support and having the people that are here to walk through, these are the things that you want to look at, right? Okay, this is how we want to process it.
How many of you out there, over the talking all of you, have ever actually done the budget? What do you see, Lori, when people come? Really attractively nobody? I find.
Yeah, I get the outliers that are really on it. I'm so impressed.
But most people, the money comes in, it goes out, and they don't exactly know how. And there might be the person that puts it in, the person that spends it, so they don't actually know how it got there. And the other person doesn't know.
The most difficult conflicts when I'm a neutral is one spouse knows exactly where the money goes, has the budget, and the other spouse doesn't give a S about what the budget is.
Yeah, they're like,
so my spouse is trying to control the spending of another spouse who doesn't see the value in budgeting. So those dynamics, you've seen those a lot, Laura, come to your table.
So tips for you: you are going to be doing one of your first budgets possibly. We're going to be assessing what do I in a perfect world want? And then what's the cost of that? And does it fit into my post-divorce budget? And every time we say yes to something, we're probably going to be saying no to something else. So what are you okay saying no to? Maybe you don't care if you don't go to Starbucks again for the rest of your life. You're going to eat. You're not going to go out for dinner more than once. You'll figure out where you can trim. But either you're going to work more or you're going to spend less. Because you're going to have a one household budget who now has 2 households to operate. Quite often on a similar amount of money before we hit the recovery. If there is even room for recovery. You might be in close to retirement. You might have 4 kids. I've got one right now, 4 kids, homeschooled them all the way. The littlest one's only 3.5. She's not going back to work right away. 2 homes, same budget. Much to consider. We're so happy you joined us here. We love being a part of this adventure because for us, this is a passion for us. We're here to help people divorce in a way that they can move on and heal and recover and restore themselves and find a new path and still be able to parent, because maybe you aren't going to be known forever, but unless something tragic happens, you're going to be parents forever. And if you can show up in a room and the children are watching you, that's the bad news, because it means they're trying to see how you're acting. You should be watching them. Graduation, birthday parties, celebrations. They should not have to look out and see, oh, mom and dad are standing beside each other. Which one should I say hello to first? Give them the gift of knowing that even though that you're not going to be married, you are always going to be parents, and you're going to be twin parents. Thanks again, and please join us here any month if you want. We'll be back. Next time it's going to be August 25th, 6 to 7:30, all about the home.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.